All right. Good afternoon. My name is Verletta Kern. I'm from the UW Library's Open Scholarship Commons, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our Hacking the Academy Data Science for the Social Good program. Hacking the Academy is designed to look at new ways that scholarship is produced, archived, shared, reused, and the Data Science for the Social Good program clearly exemplifies all of these values. So we're really excited to be working with eScience Institute and offering this information session today. As I welcome all of you, I'm also delighted to welcome my colleagues Anissa Tanweer, research scientist at eScience Institute, and Emily Keller, the Data Science for Social Good program manager. Anissa and Emily are going to kick today's session off with some information about the program, followed by a question and answer period that will be facilitated by my colleague Andrea Berg, our graduate student specialist for digital scholarship at the Open Scholarship Commons. So we're going to record the information portion of the session today, and then we'll stop the recording right before the question and answer period so everybody can feel comfortable asking and facilitating those questions coming through. So without further ado, at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Anissa. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Coletta. Yeah, and we have two open calls right now. One is for applications for student fellows to participate in our Data Science for Social Good program, and one is for prospective project leads who have a project idea they want to submit to it. So this particular session is geared towards prospective student fellows. If you happen to be here and you're interested in submitting a project proposal, we will have another information session for that. Is that tomorrow, Emily?
No, that's on Thursday, 12.
On Thursday. Okay, anyway, check our website if you're in that boat. Otherwise, we're assuming that everybody here is interested in the opportunity to be a student fellow in our program. And before we go any further, Andrea, if people have questions along the way, should they put that in the, is there a Q&A section or chat, or how do you want to handle questions that come up as we go?
Yeah, let's just put questions in the chat if they come up during the presentation. And if they're clarifying questions, then I'll butt in so we can get those out of the way. And
Perfect.
If they're more substantive questions, then we'll save those for the Q&A at the end.
Okay, perfect. And I will not try to monitor the chat. I'll wait for you to interrupt if there's anything that needs clarification before going forward. Awesome, thank you. So today I'll start by giving you a brief introduction to the eScience Institute and what we do on campus. And then Emily will give an overview of the Data Science for Social Good program, and I'll talk about the application process and some of the previous projects we've taken on. And then we'll move on to a Q&A. Next slide, Emily. And you can go to the next slide. Great, thanks. So the mission of the eScience Institute is to empower researchers and students in all fields to answer fundamental questions through the use of large, complex, and or noisy data. Go on. This is where we're physically located on campus on the 6th floor of the Physics and Astronomy Tower that's down on the corner of 15th and Pacific. In the WRF Data Science Studio. These photos are a little bit outdated. We don't have that beautiful bold carpet anymore. It's much more subdued. Not as fun, but classy. Like, oh, you can see a little bit of it in that bottom right corner. It's a nice gray blue tone. So this is the home of the eScience Institute and where our research staff and core team is based, but it's also a campus-wide resource. We have a lot of events and meetings there. It's also an open workspace. There are desks that are not assigned to any individuals that people are free to work at, and various kinds of spaces for gathering, tables and couches and things like that. This used to be a library and was converted into the Data Science Studio probably in somewhere around 2016. I forget the exact date, but it continues to be an open resource, as the libraries are for the entire campus community. Okay, Emily, you can go on to the next slide. This is our research staff, pictures of our research staff. And one of the things I wanted to call people's attention to in showing you this is just the disciplinary breadth that we have on board. We literally have everything from A to Z. We have astronomers and we have zoologists and lots of things in between. So cross-disciplinarity, interdisciplinarity is something that we really value in our program and across all of our programs, really, as something that has a lot of advantages for thinking in new ways about data and research and questions of social impact as well. So these are some of our kind of core offerings and programs. We have open office hours that anyone can drop into to ask a data scientist a question about the research that you're doing. These days, since a lot of work is happening remotely, they're often, it's a matter of making an appointment rather than physically dropping in during a certain time. But that's a resource that anybody on campus can take advantage of. We have been running for many years a data science seminar that brings guest speakers to deliver talks and research talks and other offerings that are specific to data intensive research and organization. We offer a variety of tutorials and boot camps and workshops and hack weeks, sort of informal educational offerings around data science. One of these, every quarter we run software carpentry, which is something of an on-ramp for people who are new to programming or wanting to pick up a language that a programming language that they've never worked with before. So every quarter we offer a Python software carpentry, and often we also offer R. So that's something to look into if that's of interest to you. And then we also have these more disciplinary oriented hack weeks that are about a particular disciplinary community getting together to develop skills in data science sorts of approaches. We also have a winter incubator that pairs a researcher with a data scientist from the eScience Institute to do sort of intensive work side by side for an entire quarter. And then we offer the summer data science for social good program, which is what you're all here to hear about. So we'll talk about that in greater depth now, and I will pass it over to Emily to do that.
Great, thank you, Verletta and Andrea, for hosting us today. So we've been running the DSSG program since 2015. It was initially inspired by a program with the same name that was run out of the University of Chicago, which is now at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. And we incorporated elements from the data science incubator, which Anissa just talked about, the close collaboration, incorporating lots of different perspectives, and the dedication of the project leads to continue carrying the work forward. So I'll discuss some of the primary goals of our program. The first thing to note is that the name Data Science for Social Good is an aspirational theme. And we realize that good intentions are just the beginning when it comes to generating positive social outcomes. We incorporate time for ethical discussions and reflections and considering the impacts of our work from different angles throughout the program. So we really see our program as a laboratory in which we're trying to figure out how to use data science for social good, and understanding that that is a complex undertaking. Equally important is serving our students who are fellows in the program and training them in data science methods and best practices. And our program is responsive to student interests and ideas. We ask for feedback multiple points throughout the program, and we do make changes each year based on what we hear from students. We're also interested in increasing data science capacity across fields, partner organizations, and the researchers who serve as our project leads. And finally, to positively impact society in the subject area that the projects are taking on. From 2015 to 2019, we ran the program in person at the eScience Institute. And in 2020 and 2021, we migrated the program online due to the pandemic. And since then, we've been trying different hybrid formats. So this year, we plan to have fellows work in person at the Data Science Studio, as long as that's still advisable by public health guidelines. So fellows will be required to work on campus during most regular business hours, but teams will have some flexibility to incorporate a certain amount of time of remote work into their schedules. Project leads and data scientists may work either remotely or in person, and that will depend upon the projects that we select this year. And program staff, including Anissa and myself, will be working in a hybrid format. Our program takes on 2 to 4 projects each year, and this year we'll be hosting 2 projects. So that will be a total of 8 fellows that we're expecting. The program is structured around project teams. So we select 4 student fellows to be part of each team. And we're looking for a range of disciplinary diversity and skills backgrounds. And when we make up the teams, we take into consideration student interests and what they're hoping to contribute as well. Each team, in addition to the student fellows, they'll be supported by 1 or sometimes 2 data scientists from the eScience Institute, and that's from the people who Anissa showed you earlier. The data scientists primarily provide technical and methodological guidance, and they also help with things like cloud computing, tool selection, and programming, and depending on the needs of each team that arise. The project lead, or sometimes 2 leads, is responsible for the overall project design and vision and steering the high-level goals. We incorporate the project leads directly into our program and make them part of the team, which is unique to our program compared with some others around the country who may sort of work with them more in a client type of role. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in more detail later. So examples of project lead affiliations. We work with project leads from many different disciplines and sectors, and these are just some examples of where our project leads have come from in the past. Some are faculty members and other researchers from the University of Washington or other universities. And from the UW, we have worked with the Disaster Data Science Lab, the School of Social Work, and the Department of Astronomy. That's just to name a few. We've also worked with project leads from local agencies. That includes the Seattle Department of Transportation for the philanthropy sector, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and nonprofits. One that we worked with was Conservation International. We're open to industry partnerships as well, but this has been less common so far in our program. With our project leads as integrated members of our teams, we ask them to commit to an average of 16 hours per week to be available to their teams. And this may mean co-locating in the data science studio and working right alongside the fellows during that time. If the project leads are working remotely, that will mean being available for specified meetings during the week, having flexibility for impromptu meetings, and also being very responsive via Slack and email. Project leads are also asked to participate in program-wide meetings and sessions. And one of the main roles of the project leads is to provide domain expertise. So as those who are most closely involved in the topical area of the project, we look to project leads to provide the relevant literature and to help onboard the students to get them up to speed quickly at the beginning of the summer, since students are coming from different disciplinary backgrounds and they may not have the specific knowledge of the topic that they'll be working on. We rely on project leads to facilitate relationships with stakeholders who are involved with the projects, or stakeholders may be people affected by the projects. So developing and cultivating those relationships is also an important aspect of their work. We expect project leads to be able to discuss and promote the work. So we don't take projects that are in stealth mode, although we realize that some projects have sensitivities such as the need to not reveal sensitive data. So we take that seriously as well. But we promote open and reproducible work whenever possible. And we need to be able to post descriptions of the projects on our website and also acknowledge our program and publications that come from it. And finally, we ask project leads to include students as authors on any work that comes out of the program or is based on the work, and even if they do not contribute to writing a specific paper. So what we expect from students, this is a 40-hour-a-week commitment, and we provide $9,000 stipend for the 10 weeks of the summer. We have pretty strict attendance policies, and when submitting the application, we'll ask students to affirm that they can comply with those policies. And the most important thing to know there is the first 2 weeks and the last 2 weeks of the program, we need everybody to be present to not have any pre-planned absences during that time. So that would be disruptive to the project work. To be eligible, students have to be enrolled in both spring 2023 and fall 2023, either a current grad student, or we will accept undergraduate seniors who are entering graduate school in the fall. We look for baseline programming and stats knowledge. So we don't have a rigid requirement about that, but we are looking for students who are comfortable using a programming language to solve problems, either through their existing knowledge or that they would know how to seek out the knowledge that they need. Languages that are commonly used in our projects include Python, R, SQL, and JavaScript. And I will also note that applicants who have experience coding on projects, so not just through their coursework, will make pretty competitive applicants for our program. International students are eligible to apply, but we are not able to support visas. So you'll have to already have a visa to study in the United States. And we can do work authorizations either through CPT or EAD. And the two most important things we're looking for in student applications regarding personal experience and aspirations is we're looking for understanding your motivation for applying and also your experience and attitude towards working closely as part of teams during the summer. So we provide a stipend, $9,000 to every student, but we also realize that sometimes students have circumstances where they might require additional support. So anyone who is applying to the program can also apply for the UW DSSG Opportunity Scholarship, and that may provide a supplemental financial award. To apply for this, you'll be asked to briefly describe the circumstances that pose a financial barrier and just provide a simple budget for how much money you need and what you would use that money for. So what you can expect from us as the eScience Institute and the organizers of the program are you will be advised by data science mentors who are experienced in cross-disciplinary collaboration, and they have a wide range of expertise. And these are some of the areas that they are knowledgeable of. You will be trained in best practices in version control, reproducibility, ethics, and human-centered design. And we provide a lot of support and structure for teamwork collaboration because that is really the crux of our program. And it's also an intensive experience. So to help ensure that teamwork is successful, we begin with a team development workshop at the beginning of the summer. And each team will also complete a project charter to help facilitate conversations for aligning their expectations at the start of the program. And then we will give the students reminders to revisit those expectations later in the summer. We also provide a data science curriculum. So the project work is where teams will spend the most time, but especially in the early weeks of the summer, we provide a number of trainings to get everybody up to speed on some of the skills that will be crucial. So this is a list of tutorials we've offered in the past. The two at the top, which are starred, are basically beginner Git and intermediate Git. And those are the two that are always offered no matter what. The other tutorials that you see here are provided as needed. So it depends what is required for each project and also student interests. And sometimes we do offer tutorials based on student requests that may not be directly used in a project. So we do, listen to those requests. And workshops, so those are the technical tutorials. And then we also run a series of workshops that are discussion-based and interactive, and you can see some of those listed here. So some of our other activities are, we have what we call project spotlights, which are every other week, and those give teams a chance to present on some aspect of their work. And this serves several purposes. One is to help everyone kind of get insight into what others are doing in the program to help inspire each other. And it's also an opportunity to get feedback on challenges and problems that a team may be encountering from a broader community. And it can be helpful sort of in advance of the presentation that students do at the end of the summer. They often say they feel more prepared because they've been kind of doing these mini presentations as they go. So it can be helpful. Docathons are provided to give teams dedicated time to work on documentation processes before the end of the program. And this is also to underline the importance of documentation in data science. On Fridays, usually around lunchtime, we host discussions called career conversations. And this includes panelists from various sectors who are doing work that is related to data science for social good. And they talk about their work and their career path, and they can provide advice to those who might be interested in doing something similar. And we also have speakers who are social scientists and scholars who approach data-intensive work and technologies as an object of study to think about ethics and the critique of this type of work. Stakeholder engagement is a very important part of our program. So this means having the opportunity to connect with and learn from people who are somehow involved in the work or affected by it. And they may not have a role in the project, but particularly or may come from a group that really shows how the project is applied in the real world. And it's important to incorporate their perspectives. It's a big part of our program. And we usually host a series of fun social events as well. We've had weekly game gatherings on Friday afternoons. We've done karaoke or other events just to give people a chance to connect beyond doing data science work. And so here's a photo from one of those events. This is a karaoke picture from a couple of years ago. And this is a quote from one of our project leads, just talking about how she was surprised that we could make the program so much fun. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Anissa.
And I will just point out, if it's not obvious in that photo, that this was Zoom karaoke. So that made it particularly chaotic and really fun. Okay, so I am going to talk in a little bit more detail about the fellow selection process, how we run that process, and what we're looking for in applicants. So the call for applications is now open. You can visit our website and access the application form at any point in time. I'll talk about the deadline for it later. I know that that's on a slide, and I'm not going to say it from memory because I don't want to risk getting it wrong. So if you have any questions as you're going through the process of applying, feel free to reach out to Emily, our program manager, about that. And go to the next slide. So what we're looking for when we're reviewing applications are a number of things. So there are qualities that we're looking for in individuals, and then there's a sort of balance that we're trying to get across teams and across the cohort as we're forming teams. So in individuals, we need to make sure that there's some baseline programming and research methods training. So this program is not imagined and not structured as a boot camp for somebody to get an introduction into programming. So we are expecting folks to come in with some amount of experience. Now, it's not easy to quantify what that amount is. We have an FAQ on our website where we talk a little bit about more about what we're looking for. But I would say in general, if you've taken a couple classes that incorporate programming, or you've taken a couple formal introductions or even informal introductions to programming, that's probably not enough. One thing we look for is people demonstrating that they have experience using programming in the context of some sort of project-based work, because that's when you really kind of start to integrate some of the concepts and practices into your skill set. We're also looking for strong motivation for wanting to participate, wanting to get things out of the program that are aligned with what we're offering and what we think this is a great opportunity to do for growth and development. We are looking for strong teamwork skills and experience in working on teams, and experience with research and working towards social good. Now, we don't define what that means. We're interested in hearing from applicants what they consider to be efforts to work towards social good. And also a commitment to diversity and fostering inclusive environments in your educational and professional settings. Across the cohort, we're looking for a range of disciplinary backgrounds and expertise. So we very explicitly don't want to have a program that's full of 16 PhD candidates in computer science and engineering. We think it's really valuable to have various disciplinary perspectives brought to bear on these problems. So, we're looking for people from the social sciences, people from the natural sciences, people from the methodological fields, people coming from policy backgrounds. We really try to kind of have a well-rounded cohort from that disciplinary perspective. We're also looking for a range of technical abilities. So everybody will be great at something when they come into this program, and everybody will have things to learn. And we sort of intentionally select a cohort with variation across technical abilities in that way. And also a range of educational experience levels. So people, this year we're accepting undergraduates if they will be starting a graduate program in the fall. So when we say a range of educational experiences, interested in people who are kind of, advanced in their doctoral candidacy in the first year of their master's program coming into graduate school. We will consider all of those ranges. The selection process starts with, once we have closed our application portal, we'll do an initial screening of applications to make sure that we're identifying all of those that kind of meet the sort of threshold criteria that we've spelled out. And then most of the applications will go on to a full committee review where we have folks from the eScience Institute giving really careful attention to each candidate. And you'll have each candidate gets multiple reviewers. And then from that, we'll select a subset of those candidates who will be invited to sit for an interview. That tends to be around 20% of the total applicant pool that passes onto the interview stage. It's not that we use 20% as any sort of benchmark that we're shooting for. It's just that that's kind of historically how it has worked out. The interviews, I forget if we have a separate slide. Do you know, Emily, do you know if we have a separate slide coming up on interviews, or should I talk a little bit about that here?
Yeah, we don't have one actually.
Okay, great. Then I will talk a little bit about what that interview process is like. In recent years, and this is always subject to change, but in recent years, how we've done it is the interviews are with two folks from the eScience Institute, myself and one of our data scientists. We're asking largely questions about your prior experiences and how you would leverage those in the Data Science for Social Good program. And those prior experiences, some of them may be about your teamwork experiences and your project-based research, and some of them might be about your technical knowledge and your research background. We then, of those who sat for an interview, a subset of those candidates will advance onto what we call a shortlist. And if you are invited to be on the shortlist, you will receive descriptions of the projects that we're taking on for the summer, and we'll ask you for some feedback in terms of which projects you would be most interested in and why, what you feel like you have to contribute to those projects, and what you would hope to learn from being a part of that team. And then we'll take all of that into consideration along with everything else that we've learned about you through your written materials and through the interview, and we'll finalize the initial offers that we'll be making to a cohort coming in. So basically, if you make it onto the short list after the interview stage, that means that you're either going to be getting an offer of admission into the program, or you'll be waitlisted. And if you're waitlisted, that means we think you're a great candidate, you would do really well, but we just don't have enough seats in the program to give all of our excellent candidates a spot in the program. And so if something opens up, then you may still be invited to join the program. Important dates, our application portal opened on January 9th. And today is our student information session. February 13th is when the student applications are due. See, it's good I didn't say it before because I was thinking it was Valentine's Day. So I'm glad that it's the day before Valentine's Day, February 13th. Mid-March is when we'll send out notifications of whether you are being invited to sit for an interview or not. Late March is when we'll hold interviews. That has historically been the year that's spring break between the winter quarter and spring quarter at the University of Washington. So that will likely be when it is again this year. Early April is when we should be able to give you a notification of whether or not you're advancing to the shortlist. And then and so like I said, at that point, we solicit a little bit more information from you that we consider in the process. And then by mid-April is when we should be able to provide notice of admission or waitlisting. The program starts on June 12th and it ends on August 18th. And one thing to note, I think that Emily mentioned this, but in the first 2 weeks of the program, you can't miss any of the program time. And in the last 2 weeks of the program, you're not allowed to miss any time. So just to give you, that's the application process, just to give you a sense of the kind of projects we take on in the Data Science for Social Good program. This is a very non-exhaustive list of topical interests. In the past, we worked on projects related to affordability and livability, city planning, environmental concerns, equity and justice, hazards and resilience, health and well-being, housing, public education, sociodemographic disparities, and transportation. Like I said, we're open to other topics and issue areas. This is just sort of to date what a number of our projects have focused on. In terms of the technical areas of e-science expertise, the kinds of things that our data scientists can really help a team incorporate into their projects, thinking about new platforms, algorithms, methods, and data sets, approaches to working with large heterogeneous and noisy data sets, thinking about scalable analytics and predictive models, interactive visualizations, code review, publishing, reproducibility, and we offer lots of online teaching materials and tutorials. These were the 4 projects we took on last summer. One was the cost of living with the self-sufficiency standard. So this project was taking the data that informs this self-sufficiency standard, which is an alternative to the official poverty measure that's promoted by the federal government, but is inadequate in many ways. So the UW Center for Women's Welfare has developed this alternative to establishing a threshold for poverty. And the work that our team was doing was kind of modernizing the infrastructure that they use to build out that model that varies from across different geographies and different family types. So it's a very data-informed standard. And this team was creating the infrastructure to allow that standard to be used by a lot of different kinds of stakeholders around the country and to be more efficient for the folks at the UW Center for Women's Welfare. Another one was tracking family and intergenerational poverty. So this team was working with this massive merged longitudinal administrative data set from the state of Washington and trying to figure out how those merged administrative records could be used to analyze poverty at the household level, because poverty in these data sets or income in these data sets is treated as an individual characteristic, but that's not in reality how poverty is experienced by people. We also took on a project that was dealing with the problem of streak from low Earth orbiting satellites that show up in astronomical images, but also cause a problem for all other kinds of populations and communities as well, and trying to kind of automate and quantify that problem. And our final project, Heating Loads in Alaska and Beyond, was developing estimates for the carbon load of or how much carbon is produced from heating structures in Alaska. And that's a really important variable to understand to plan for decarbonization. So this work was going to to be an input into efforts to develop a long-term plan for decarbonizing the Arctic. So those are just last year's projects. I'm going to talk about a couple more historical examples just to give you an example of sort of what the breadth, how broad our view is of what counts as data science and how we work at sort of different stages of the data science pipeline or life cycle, so to speak. So this is a project that we took on back in, I want to say it was 2015 or 2016, it was a while ago, that was doing text mining and machine learning on Amazon reviews of foods to see if foodborne illness could be detected earlier than with conventional methods. And so this was very kind of exploratory work on the front end to see if this data set that previously hadn't been used to ask this kind of question could be viable in any way at all. So sort of, early on in the work to get a sense of is there any traction in pursuing this kind of research project? And then this is another project we took on, I think this was in 2017 or 2018, following Hurricane Harvey, I believe, looking at satellite imagery to try to detect damage to structures in order to direct resources to high priority areas. So this was trying to apply a new modern method that could be automated, that could automate a task that is historically rather painstaking. And then we also took on a project that was kind of more so in the middle of a much larger project that has a lot of moving parts. So this particular work, our students were working to develop a standard, or working to develop a proposal for a new standard to collect pedestrian data in OpenStreetMap. And that would eventually feed into a routing application that would be catered to the needs of people with mobility limitations. So there was this bigger project called Access Map that aimed to do just that, to create a routing application like Google Maps for people who are limited in mobility in some way, for example, if they use a wheelchair. And the problem was, writing the routing algorithm itself was the simple, straightforward part. The difficult part was getting the data that you need in order to make an application like that useful. And so our team was kind of taking this one small slice of this bigger, much longer term project to address accessibility needs through open pedestrian data. And then another project, was there, Emily, I think there was a slide before this. There one about detection of vote pollution. Yeah. So this project is kind of at the other end of the spectrum. So our DSSG teams were working with project leads who already had this package in R called EI Compare that was being used in court cases to litigate challenges to or violations of the Voting Rights Act. And so this statistical package already existed and it was there and being used in real world cases where the Voting Rights Act was being litigated in the court of law. And what our students were doing was adding some functionality to that package and building out documentation and use cases to make that more accessible to a broader constituency of stakeholders. So all of that is to say, hopefully you have gotten the impression that we don't take a cookie cutter approach to the projects that we take on. We have this really broad view of what counts as data science and where we think our program can intervene in a meaningful way in a larger data science project. We know that in 10 weeks, we're only able to accomplish so much. And so we look for, strategically to partner with people and organizations who have longer term projects and ongoing commitment to sustaining the work, where we can sort of insert ourselves for this 10 weeks and make a meaningful difference on some aspect of that work. And hopefully this also gives you the sense that, we're not just about machine learning or predictive analytics, but we really take this broad view of what work is valuable in data science as well. So I think that is everything that we prepared for you today. We will take questions now, of course, and if you have questions that come up in the future, feel free to reach out to Emily or myself. If there are questions about the application process, eligibility, things like that, you can reach out to Emily. If you have questions about the program content or the projects, you can reach out to me.